What's going on, everybody? Jesse Montano out here in Dallas. It is Thursday, May 9th. I only know game days and non-game days now. Thursday, May 9th, we got game 2, Avs Stars tonight. Just got back to the hotel after morning skate, and I'm joined by my great friend, Meghan Angley of DNVR, one of the best in the biz. Thanks for taking some time on this sticky, humid day to come hang out.
We were talking about it on the way in. It's better today.
It is.
There's a little bit of a breeze rolling through, so it cuts on the humidity, and it's might be the best day yet, actually.
Yeah, I agree. And you know me, as much as I publicly want to oh man, so hot and humid, I'll take this over the snow and the cold.
Oh yeah.
We're inside with the AC.
Yeah,
so it's better.
AC's helping a lot.
It's easier to say that.
Heavy lifting.
Yeah, now. Cool. We just got back from morning skate. I guess let's kind of start with the newsy stuff for morning skate. Jonathan Drouin on the ice in light blue.
You know what that means.
You know, we could be anything. Don't know. In light blue, and then Yoel Kiviranta, full participant. He didn't stay out with the healthy scratches. Jared Bednar said they're hopeful. Drouin looked like that. Didn't look like a guy that was far off to me.
Mika Rantanen said his hands still work or something like that. Like his hands are still good. That's all I know.
And by the way, it was finally I went on with DMAC the other day, and we didn't want to go too far down the Jonathan Drouin.
What does it mean when
right.
he gets back?
Well, and I'm like, what was it? Because I didn't know if it had been officially confirmed anywhere, but it is. It's a cut on his leg. He was cut by a skate in game 82. And they're at the point now where obviously he's healthy enough to get back on the ice. I don't think they're worried about an opening, but you're just still, I think, at the phase with infection, trying to avoid infection. So just to officially kind of put that update out there, the cut on his leg, and they're hoping they can get him back soon. Even if Yoel Kiviranta is good to go tonight, would you take Chris Wagner out and put Kivi back in? I thought Wagner was good in game 1.
I did think Wagner was good in game 1, but I also reflect on how good the third line was with Kiviranta, Wood, and Colton. And I don't know if Mason Marchment is an option for Dallas tonight, but if that is
he is. He's going in for Faxa.
Spoke at their morning skate.
Yep.
That makes a difference in my eyes. I feel like then they want to make their depth more competitive with Dallas's to counter that, because Mason Marchment's a lot like Miles Wood, perhaps with a little more skill upside, but I feel terrible saying that in the face of the overtime winner. So yeah, I think that Kiviranta would make some sense there. Then I think he packs maybe more of a scoring punch than Chris Wagner. And there's just a little more familiarity and games under his belt with the Avs over the course of this season than Wagner comparatively. Yeah. And just what that third line teased with Kiviranta on it was so good. It was like a completely different player.
I mean, really, I was going to say, let's park just a couple seconds to talk about he was maybe I'm not gonna say he was the best player, obviously for round 1, but he was maybe the biggest surprise for me in round 1 was how much Yoel Kiviranta dialed up his play.
No, it's true. He just looked different from the regular season. And I think we talked about it on the show we did in Winnipeg, how Logan O'Connor left big shoes to fill. Yeah. And it was surprising to see Kiviranta take those steps to kind of come close to that, because even thinking back to when Zach Parise was tried on that third line earlier in the season, it just didn't quite work. But obviously Zach Parise is a great player. He's versatile and complements other lines so well. The fact that Kiviranta found that chemistry with Colton and Wood in the first round, the Winnipeg series,
the way that he did
is impressive.
Well, and we don't have to tell Avs fans about Yoel Kiviranta in the playoffs. Avs Stars,
Dallas revenge story.
So that was the first thing that I thought when he wasn't in for game 1. I was like, man, can you imagine if Yoel Kiviranta draws into this series later and can be an impact player?
I hope it has an emotional chord that it strikes within him.
Has to, right?
Right, like he finds himself coming to Colorado, doesn't get an NHL contract out the gate. There probably has to be this sense his time in Dallas was over. He had to turn that chapter to what could have been a difficult one. And now he's dressing in NHL playoff games with a good Colorado Avalanche team. I hope there's some sense of you took a pass on me prematurely. Like, I'll show you.
Yeah, you knew how valuable I was in the playoffs, and now I'm going to stuff it back in your face. What more did you want me to do? So that's kind of the news for tonight. Obviously, Alexander Georgiev going in net, no real surprise. I thought he was outstanding in game one. I thought he gave them a chance to get back in the game. I didn't have much of an issue with a lot of that first period from him. When you're going up against Jake Ottinger, you're going to need, like, Georgiev's going to need to at least be as good as he was in game one.
Yeah, and I didn't think Ottinger was bad in game one either. Obviously, the OT goal is not the best look.
The more I rewatch that one, I'm like, what are you doing?
Right. It looks like he makes the push, but it's just a bit too late. He's so athletic too, I think 9 out of 10 times he seals that post. But
that had to be him not expecting Miles Wood to try to pull that to his backhand, right?
No, I think so too. And I reflect on maybe the sneakiness of Miles Wood's speed too. If Ottinger's perhaps not familiar with that side of Wood, I don't know how we wouldn't be seeing him come up ice that quickly, but that close. One might be the one that Andre looks at and doesn't feel so great about. But I agree with you. I look at Georgiev's first period and I'm not hanging too much on him other than maybe the first goal against, like, it's at distance, but he's also screened. And it was a screen that could have probably been challenged more at the net front. So even that one, I'm not coming down too hard on Georgiev for. And what I found most impressive about that was I feel like we've seen other iterations of Georgiev see that goal light come on 3 times in just the first period alone and sweat it. And not even because he's frustrated with himself. I could see him in the past getting frustrated with his team. Like, what are you guys doing?
Right.
And he does it. It seems like he had a short-term memory in between periods and really let that roll off his shoulders and had confidence in the team in front of him to perform better. And then they did. And he elevated his game with them because when the game got tighter and the Avs were playing better, providing some goal support, Georgiev was also coming up with timely saves. And I think that's what's been missing is it felt like these two components were separate. Like when the Avs played good or bad, Georgiev was kind of having his own night in that. And so sometimes when they would elevate their game, it's like Georgiev's still struggling a little bit. But it felt like they elevated their games together from the first into the second. Not that he was bad. It's just he got better when he needed to as well.
100%. And I think that's because I've heard you talk about that. And I think you and I have even talked about that sometimes. We're like, it's okay to have, like, you know, sometimes you need your goalie to play better than the team or every now and then the team needs to pick up the goaltender. But especially if you have aspirations of going deep in the playoffs, like there has to be a level of cohesion there.
Right.
And yes, when the team is going, the goaltender is going. And when the goaltender is going, the team can provide goal support. It can't be this constant push and pull. And I think maybe, like, I made the argument after game one of the first round that it looked like maybe the team had lost some confidence in him. But I also wonder how much of that conversation was, well, he's kind of lost confidence in the team being able to do the right thing around him.
Right.
And it feels like that was maybe something that they kind of had to work through as a group of, and obviously I don't think this was the exact conversation, but like, hey, we're going to pick you up and we're going to prop you up. In exchange, get us a big save when we need it.
Right.
And not, like, he was outstanding in overtime. They lose that game if not for Alexander Georgiev in overtime.
Dallas dominated the first 10 minutes. The goal comes in the 11th minute. So to put that into perspective, there were so many close calls.
Yeah.
It was impressive, even starting with the final seconds of the third period into the overtime period. And so I don't think Colorado deserved to lose this game by any means. They had a great second period, but Georgiev really helped them out there.
I thought the Avs really controlled periods 2 and 3. Where they gave Georgiev a lot of help. I believe, if my memory serves me right, it was no high danger chances in the second period against. And I think like only 1 or 2 in the third period, one of them being right there at the end of the period. So like the Avs did their part in the second and third, helping out Georgiev. He did his part in overtime, helping them out with a few big saves. And to the point that you were kind of making, like, that's how it should work. Like that's how it should, that's how the relationship should go. Now, I looked at Dallas in that overtime and I told Corey from the Denver Post, I said, this looks like a team that knows they're out of gas and they are trying to just pour it on early and get out of overtime quick. Pete DeBoer said after the game, our guys were tired. It was an emotional letdown. We just didn't have our legs. Megan, I'm looking at this series and it's like, if that's your problem in game one, I don't know if it's going to get any better for you. Where every other night in this series, this is obviously it's a playoff game. It's a race to 4. Every game is huge. Dallas fell behind 2-0 in round 1. I don't think they want to make a habit of that and do it again in this round. I think Colorado, I said it all year, and I'm sticking by it. I even said this on our prediction show right before the series started. I thought the Avs are the best team in the Central and in the West all year, and I'm sticking by that. I think this is a better team than what you played against Vegas. I think they are a harder team to lock down and contain, and I just don't know if Dallas is going to be able to slow the series down completely the way they want to, the way they did against Vegas, to try to get back into it if they let this one get away from them tonight.
It's an interesting comparison to reflect on like what made this possible for them to defeat their Western Conference Final Four or foe in the first round against Vegas versus Colorado. And the difference, I think, is Vegas has the depth and the experience, but they had pieces coming in a little bit too late. And I think it lacked some of the cohesion that we're seeing in this Avalanche group that has been playing together. Obviously, there's some fluctuations happening, but they've been playing together this whole season, more or less. Obviously, there's trade deadline additions. And so to that end, the cohesion, I think, is what is going to be a difference maker, is how well this team plays together right now. They've had a lot of experience playing together throughout the year, and it shows. It shows,
and you have a core that has been together and won together. Megan, there's 13 Stanley Cup rings on this Avalanche roster. That is by far more than any other team. I believe Corey did the math. I think there's more Stanley Cup champions on this Avalanche roster than on all other remaining playoff teams combined. I believe
that is compelling, right?
And so, even Vegas, even with them winning, last year, and they're out. That's why that number is what it is going forward.
And Tampa out.
Tampa out. To your point, though, there's a lot of change on that. Who is the core in Vegas? Because they're happy to shuffle the deck chairs constantly. We're getting into this part of the playoffs where, you and I have done countless shows together where we've talked about, you hear GMs say, oh, that's a great, locker room guy, a great experienced guy. He's been there. And I think that can get so overblown in so many instances. I think a game like tonight is where you'd like to see that pay off. I talked to Ross just now after morning skate, Ross Colton, and he's a really fun, loose, keep it loose, have a good time in the locker room. You can even see the intensity in his eyes where it's we've turned the page on game one. It's good to have a win. We're not thinking about game one. We are trying to put together the best game plan we can to make sure that we go home 2-0. And there's just a different focus and intensity in that locker room. And I can't help but think that this is where the guys who have been there know what to expect out of, what kind of game you're going to get from the Dallas Stars tonight.
Well, I think it's evident in game one. I also find the topic of Ross Colton being a little different in the playoffs really interesting, because I do think it's a testament to his Stanley Cup experience. I loved his response after game one was to immediately rally around Georgiev. I thought it demonstrated such a mature and experienced player. And I think that's just a testament to what you're describing in his reaction now ahead of game two. The other part of it, though, is I love Pete DeBoer's comments about how Colorado Stars, they're all over this score sheet and not enough of ours are, essentially. And I think that's what's going to make Colorado really difficult to contain, because Dallas is a well-constructed team with its own stars, but Colorado's delivered. And the way in which they delivered, I think perhaps I was dramatic in feeling that Cale Makar and Val Nichushkin not only drawing their own penalties and then scoring on the power plays that they forced was a reflection of them single-handedly reclaiming the game. They took back the game within their clutches, almost an individual effort. And I want to be cautious in saying that, because this is obviously a team effort too.
Right.
A lot of things go well to bring them to that point. But the way in which a single Cale Makar or a single Val Nichushkin, later McKinnon with the tying goal, can impact the game in that way is what I think is the difference maker. And it's not just because they're immensely talented.
Right.
I think that's the experience. And so that's what I think will be I've been criticized for criticizing Dallas's experience, and I just want to be cautious in how I talk about this moving forward, but that's what I mean. You can qualify. It's not just a Stanley Cup ring. It's having your stars deliver when the stage lights get brighter.
Yeah. I think you're 100% right. It's having your stars deliver. And then again, I just keep going back to, I don't know how much of like the Winnipeg Jet exit interviews you listen to. The amount of guys that were like, whoa, their intensity, their commitment to forecheck, their commitment to, like there were the look of shock on Winnipeg Jets players' faces. And like, that's a part to me where I was like, oh, this is like, it is about raising your level and having your leaders lead by example and just having that different intensity. And if you've never done that, I'm learning in this run, it's hard to replicate that. Like you can't fake, that playoff intensity and everything that you're talking about and elevating your game when it requires. And to your point of like the tone shifted, you could feel it in the building. And when that first goal went in, the Val Nichushkin, after he draws a penalty and scores his own goal, there's just a different buzz to the way the Avs were playing.
Even going back to the way they finished the first period, down 3 goals, they're still out hitting Dallas. They're forcing turnovers.
Yep.
If you know the Colorado Avalanche, you're not counting them out even at that point. And then, of course, the way that they respond in the second period, it just kind of solidifies why you should never count the Avs out. And it's those difference makers. And, what you were just talking about, too, how they raise their intensity. The conversation with Josh Manson yesterday was one of my favorites because he talked about how he's a byproduct of this team.
Yeah.
And it is those pace leaders driving that intensity through their play. Like you can't just practice with Nathan McKinnon and not help but raise your intensity.
Yeah.
And so I think that looking at this game, we're calling out Cale Makar, we're calling out Val Nichushkin for taking the game within their hands, but they're also driving the pace for the rest of that team. And so there are individual moments like Josh Manson's heroics in the crease,
right,
that I think are also a reflection of how it's infectious, that intensity. And I loved Rick Bonus's comments about battle level, how Colorado's battle level is just high. Yeah. Always.
Yeah.
And to your point, that is hard to replicate. And I think it does come with experience, but also having a group that's all on board with that.
That's all on board and capable of doing it. So I had an interesting conversation with, again, just because when we get to these cities in these types, in playoffs, there's a lot of people here. There's a lot of, writers and national reporters and TV people. There's just a lot of different folks to talk to and pick brains. And the theme before game 1 was, well, what the Avs did to Winnipeg, yeah, it was impressive. But guys, come on. They're not going to be able to do that to Dallas. They're not going to be able to get out into the open, and play with the speed they want. Dallas is going to clamp them down. You know what? 2 of the same people said. I laughed to myself because I had that conversation with 2 specific people before game 1. The Avs won't be able to do it. I had the same conversations last night, and they went, look, it's obvious. Dallas isn't just going to be able to contain Colorado the way that they did Vegas. And it's like, wow, that's crazy how the narrative has flipped so quickly. But here's what, to me, is the part where if I'm Dallas with what you're talking about, the raising the level and the players at the top being the ones to kind of go through that wall first. For the first time in his career, and I'm scared to tempt fate on this, Joe Pavelski looked 39 in game 1.
Yeah, this is an interesting, I told Corey, I think they need to turn the keys over to the youth a little bit.
Yep.
He still has the experience that matters. And when he moved lower in the lineup in game 1, he played better in a depth role. So he was effective, but he might not be as effective as the top line guy in the same way. They might need to turn to some of their young players, even though I'm talking about experience, to inject some life back into the top of the lineup.
And here's where I'm going with this, where I think Dallas is maybe in just they're in an interesting spot because you have the experienced guys, Joe Pavelski, Jamie Benn, Tyler Seguin, Matt Duchene. Those are your veteran guys. those guys, even Matt Duchene and even Tyler Seguin, like they are going to struggle to get up and down the ice with the Avs throughout this series. They're not the same type of players that they were, 5 years ago with the speed. Tyler Seguin has battled a lot of injuries. The players that you do feel like if you're Dallas can do that, can get up and down the ice is the youth. It's Wyatt Johnson. It's Logan Stankoven. It's Jason Robertson. That is a tall order to say, hey, 19-year-old Logan Stankoven, can you go toe-to-toe with Nathan MacKinnon tonight? We really need you to step up your offense.
This is what is incredibly impressive to me about Wyatt Johnston and how he handled the depth down the middle in the Vegas series as such a young player. I think that he could be the difference maker for Dallas in this series, but even he has his own limits. And I think that they have to do what they can to support a young player like that. And I'm curious to see what DeBoer then does with his lines, because we already saw some changes in game one that I think he'll probably try to stick with. At the start of game two, there was a lot of willingness for him to do changes in game that I found really interesting.
Well, and to be honest, I would be willing to bet that if you're Jared Bednar and if you're the Avs, what you want is for the Stars to have to start making adjustments. What has made the Stars as good as they've been this year that they have been consistently stingy. They are unwavering in their structure. That was what I heard so much from folks in the days leading up. The Avs aren't going to get them to break their structure. Well, game one, they did. The Avs got moving up and down the ice, and Dallas started breaking from that tight lockdown D.
I'm glad you shouted it out, because I wanted to give Dallas credit for the first period. The structure was evident, and it was hard for the Avs to combat it. It was hard for them to create any meaningful possession because they were clearing pucks out and exiting really quickly. Avs were not able to get second, third attempts. And then opposite, they were doing what they could. Like when Georgiev did have Seguin as a screen in front of him, it was effective. And when they capitalized on
the Jamie Benn goal.
Or the first one.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry.
Goal. And they capitalized on the element of surprise immediately off the face-off draw. There was a little bit of a misfortune with Cale Makar's stick on that one too. But I think that I sort of compare a lot of hockey to like Predators and like National Geographic Predators.
Not Nashville.
But not Nashville. And I thought the instinct for Wyatt Johnson to immediately take that shot after the face-off is what they need to lean into a little bit more, the element of surprise. And I saw them trying for it a lot in the first period, really looking to like catch Josh Manson off guard when they were resetting and Seguin rushes on him to try to force a turnover. And you see like they've pinpointed that as a vulnerability. And so Manson handled it really well, and he just moved the puck up ice. He evaded it. But what I think is interesting is it's like they lost the Predator instinct a little bit when the Avs also met them with that. And that's what I saw in the second period is a bit more, like a hunter's instinct, a killer's instinct. Avs rose to that in the second period. And even though Dallas was trying to force them because they want to play that north-south game with their speed, that's where Dallas is really good at controlling them within the neutral zone and slowing them down. They can still play east-west. Nathan MacKinnon isn't above dump and chase hockey.
Right.
And I think that's what makes Nathan MacKinnon so great is some of their best possession early in the second period came from the top six doing those blue-collar things well. And it's because they saw what Dallas was doing and they said, bet, we'll do it too. And we'll just work around it.
Yep. What you just said right there, Megan, was the theme to that game one for me. The Avs saw what happened the first period and they said, okay, we can do that.
Yeah. And we can do it well.
And we can do it really well. I thought the way that Chris McFarland has built this team, not going into training camp, going into the playoffs, the way the team looked going into the playoffs, I don't think he's got enough credit and the team's got enough credit for they built for this series. Like they built specifically to play against the Dallas Stars, the Vegas Golden Knights, the Winnipeg Jets. I thought what Jared Bednar said before game one of this series when someone asked him, like, well, how are you going to handle them trying to slow you down? And he said, that's what every team does to us. Every team's game plan to play the Colorado Avalanche is slow them down, take away the speed in the neutral zone. And he kind of like made the snarky comment of like, we're good at this. Like, we know that teams are going to play us like that. And we build a game plan to combat teams try to slow us down. And so, yeah, like you said, the Avs looked at that and said, we can play east-west. We went out and got guys like Miles Wood and Ross Colton and Valerie Nichushkin and Arturi Lehkonen and Brandon Duhaime and Andrew Cogliano, who are not afraid to get below the goal line and go win a puck and dig a puck out. Nathan McKinnon, not afraid to go below the goal line and win a board battle. Like, tonight's going to be an interesting chess match. I think Pete DeBoer is going to just try to pack the middle. I think he's going to try to slow this game to a crawl, but it's going to be interesting. The Stars are going to be a desperate team, but they can't cheat for offense. If you cheat for offense, you're going to be digging the puck out of the back of your net all night.
No, and this is where I proposed this to Corey. Like, it was kind of a lower event hockey game at points because they're trying to slow down Colorado's speed so it's not back and forth, up and down the ice. But that limited Dallas's chances too. Like, in trying to be responsible, they also, I think, held their Stars back just a little bit. I think that's why the Stars aren't on the score sheet the way that Pete DeBoer would like to see some more of those contributors get on it. Is they, well, for one, a little bit of panic was put in them. Like, we have to be careful with the Colorado Avalanche. So credit to the Avs for making them feel like we need to just lock it down, play simple and responsibly. But it hurt Dallas's production too. And so, to your point, like, they have to toe that line a little bit better. Act. Exactly. And that's where I'm like, turn the keys over to the youth. But like, they can't totally do that.
Right.
It would be irresponsible.
Totally. Just real quick, got a quick little super chat in here. And this just, I can't tell you how much this warms my heart. Megan and Jesse, the two best at covering the Avs, Frantic 32. Thank you so much. We were talking this morning. We were like, we got to get another one. That was just
I'm so glad I got the invite back on the show.
Yeah, an open invite anytime you want, Megan. Thank you guys so much. But again, and that's to me what makes this game interesting. And look, Pete DeBoer, outstanding coach.
Oh yeah,
he has had the Avs number in the playoffs in the past. He's 8-0 in Game 7s. Like, I am not counting out the fact that Pete DeBoer is going to move some chess pieces around. But this, Megan, we've seen 6 games played. The Winnipeg Jets seemed caught off guard by this version of the Colorado Avalanche. In Game 1 and that post game, the Dallas Stars seemed caught off guard by what they saw.
That was my impression of DeBoer's availability.
Yes.
Like, maybe that's a strategy, but he seemed caught off guard.
He seemed caught off guard in the same way that I remember being genuinely surprised with the way that Rick Bowness sounded after Game 1. Their forecheck wasn't like that in the pre-scout. They didn't play with that kind of urgency through the neutral zone on the tape that we watched. And it's like, how are the Avs 2 years removed from a Stanley Cup and they're still surprising teams?
Even to hear the Jets players the next morning skate talk about Game 1, they're like, we know we met them in the regular season. This isn't the same team.
No. This
isn't the same team at all. Like, and they kind of reflected like, oh, there were some injuries, there's some absences. They're kind of like, oh, that's why the regular season result was what it was.
Right. And now let's go a little bit back to your killer instinct. Can you be the predator in this type of situation? What I noticed about the Avs in round 1 was when they smelled blood in the water, they pounced.
Right.
It felt like that a little bit in Game 1 of this series too. Once they felt that momentum swing back the other way, they were like, oh, okay. All right, we're on the hunt.
Like, let's Nichushkin goal.
Right. Like, let's go. And they kind of start pushing and pushing and pushing. And I just wonder, with all the, the veteran leadership stuff that we talked about, how much is that kind of the conversation in the locker room? Like, we know their backs are against the wall already. We've already backed these guys into a little bit of a corner. How much can we just, go for the throat tonight and go home up 2-0, get that ball arena crowd? I mean, can you, if the Avs walk out of here up 2-0, can you even imagine what that building is going to be like on Friday or Saturday night?
No. You know what? No, I didn't want to make this a conversation into the noise level at American Airlines Center, but I just felt like ball arena fans
say it
can show more. I've seen more in a regular season game. And it's
That
not that
felt like a regular season
they
game.
weren't quiet. It just was not coming from Winnipeg, where it's like, that's a very passionate fan base. Ball Arena, I know it well. Also a very passionate fan base. And I was surprised because the entertainment and production value of what Dallas put together.
They did it big.
Incredible.
Yeah, they did it
and,
big.
you know, I have to credit even their management for the team that they've constructed. There is a commitment from Dallas management to this team. I respect it a lot. But then the fan base, I was like, that left. I just thought it would be.
For the second round.
Yeah, I thought it would be right there with everything else about Dallas. It's a great building. The staff is incredible. I think it's a good team.
Yep.
And the production for it was amazing. And then the crowd just fell a little bit flatter than I thought.
There were a lot of empty seats.
It was technically a sellout, but there were a lot of empty seats.
There was technically a sellout, and I'm going to steal Corey's joke here. It was a sellout, and Smith, party of 75, I guess, didn't show up to a couple of sections there.
A lot of green, you know, like I'm not trying to
I'm not
dunk on the Dallas fan base. I just feel like if they go up 2-0, the fan base waiting for them in Denver is going to be insane.
And they're going to be all over the star. Like it's funny because you're usually not having these conversations. So you get to games like 4 and 5 of like, but like you very quickly, not just at the Avs won game 1, but the way that game 1 shook out. Suddenly this game 2 is like, holy smokes, there's a lot at stake here.
No, there is. And I didn't want to abandon commenting on this, but in talking about capitalizing, smelling the blood in the water, you know what I really appreciate about the Avs is they have patience for that moment. Like they know what they're building towards to find that moment where they see the opportunity to attack. And you can feel that building. And what I like about it is they act like they've been there before. And so they know they don't have to act desperately or at the first chance because they're just building towards third and fourth opportunities. And it shifts the entire momentum of the game. And so like they are playing the game in 5-minute increments. You know, Jared Bednar has talked about winning that 5-minute game inside the game. But they also know that they're stacking those increments, and that's building towards the best plan of attack, an opportunity to attack. And what I appreciate about that is they don't get too ahead of themselves in those moments. And I think they have, and when they do, the results show that. But that's what I thought was interesting about the Dallas game is they didn't look like they ever counted themselves out. And that was after a first period where they went down 3 goals. Like you could just tell they were still building towards better.
I don't remember in my time covering this team or really even just watching this team, I don't know if I've ever seen such a calm, collected group. Nothing seems to faze them. Like they're down 3-0, they're up 3-0. They're on a 5-on-3, penalty kill. They get a like they just even keel. I just don't feel is even an adequate enough descriptor for the way that this team operates. Like it's almost beyond even keel. You can't rattle them.
No, it's a really impressive aspect. I feel like I'm not even articulating it in a way that does them justice for the patience that they have to show to launch a comeback effort. Like they understand that a comeback effort is going to unfold over the span of 40 minutes. And then in the 40th minute, that's where Vanachushkin finds the goal. And it's like there is something you see in them, though, when they're building towards that moment that they know exactly what's coming at the 40-minute mark. I'm just pinning a moment.
Right. But, yeah. An arbitrary. Yeah.
And I think that's really impressive that they know where they're headed.
And again, like I think that we're going to learn a lot about both teams tonight. The part to me that's concerning for Dallas is I don't think that was a bad game for Dallas in game 1. Like I think they just kind of got worn down.
Well, they come off the heels of game 7 with very little rest in between. And so I'm interested to see a rested Dallas team for game 2. I think that's going to be a difference maker for them.
But now, so here is my question though. How rested are they? Like how much more rested are they?
I do worry about that a little. Like no matter the result of this series, if this is another long one for them,
right?
They are getting a really difficult path to the cup.
Totally.
And that's not to say that Avs had it any easier. Like Winnipeg was still second in the Central Division. And
the Avs have started on the road for both these series.
Right. Yeah. Like they haven't necessarily had an easy path. Maybe they made Winnipeg look easy, but after game one, didn't feel that way for a second.
No.
So I am curious to see then how much rest Dallas actually has. But hopefully too, there's the emotional component of the letdown that was game one, because that was within their clutches for a good amount of that game, to respond in kind of an angry way towards Colorado.
Right. And that's the part, and not, I think I've made this point before, so I'll stop spinning in circles, but like, that's the part that is going to be interesting to me, because to me, what Dallas needs to do is come out and have the most consistent version of their game. I wonder how much they're going to get caught up in, we need this one. We need to have this one. We need to have this one. And is that going to cause them to stray from what has made them so successful?
If they cling to that too closely,
right,
it could harm them.
Right. All right. I think that's all we got.
Awesome.
Do you have any last thoughts on tonight, game one, this series? No?
No. I do think, too, we've been really high on the Avs for this pod, but I think it's going to be really interesting for game two. I think it's going to be more competitive between both teams, and it already was so competitive in game one.
I agree. And like you said, I'm not trying to make it sound like the Avs have this one sewn up, but
no,
that was a statement of a win for game one.
Statement.
And we got to see if they can back it up here tonight.
Absolutely.
That's all we got. Mark on the board, as always. For Meghan Angley, thank you so much for stopping by. I'm Jesse Montano. We'll be talking to you guys here tonight. Thanks so much for stopping by, guys.